Every person in this room has the perfect motive.
Stand back!
For murder.
What do you mean? Murder.
But only one of these suspects is the murderer.
All right, I get to talk about my favorite movie adaptation of a game, Clue the movie. All right, so when I was a kid, I grew up playing Clue. I grew up playing the actual board game, and then they made a Dungeons and Dragons version. I played that, and then the mobile version, played that. And so I've played Clue a lot. Now, when I heard that there was a movie adaptation, I went, oh, when is it coming out? And I was like, man, it came out in the 80s. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, oh, okay. So my dad showed the movie to me, and I was like, wow, that was actually really good. And like, I was genuinely surprised on how good it was, because at the time that I watched it, video game movies were pretty much mediocre to terrible. I mean, I know mediocre and terrible sound like they're in the same boat, but they were either fine or just like, okay, we're going to throw this to the curb and just drive it over. We don't care. So after I watched it, I was like, wow, that was actually really good. And then this quickly became just one of my favorite films, just of how smart, clever it is. So Clue the movie, it's, if you don't know the brief story of the Clue board game, a bunch of guests show up to a house, and then the host is murdered, and it's your job to figure out who was the killer. Now, with this, it's the same thing, but they actually add more story to it. There's an actual reason everybody is there. And it's like, oh, wow, that was actually a nice, like, ad. So the titular characters, like Peacock, Scarlet, White, Plum, Green, and Mustard, all of them have a reason for being there, because the host knows something about each one of them. And it's really, really interesting the way they do it. And it's quite clever. So it's like, okay, see, that was something they didn't do in the board game. They were just basically saying, okay, 6 people are invited to a party, and the host gets murdered, and you have to figure it out. Go. This is like, no, this is a movie. So we actually have to connect it. So we actually have to connect every single person here to the host. So there's a reason why they were specifically invited. It wasn't just to be invited to be invited. There's an actual reason for them being there. And it's really cool and clever. This movie is also just incredibly funny. Like, it's not, a lot of the humor comes from the characters. It's very character-driven humor, where it's like, what can they say or do that just, is realistic, but would be funny? Something as simple as somebody sipping on their soup, and they go, and then the other one goes, like, super loud. So it's like, but they don't really acknowledge the fact that they're doing that. So everyone around them is just kind of like staring at them, like, you realize you're slurping really loud, but they're just like, we don't care. It's like something as simple as that. Or, if you lean on a certain table that is not very sturdy, and, someone is just talking, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that table just breaks, and then you're just like, yeah, I'm good. It's stuff like that. This movie does it very well. And also, I come to find out that this movie was co-written by John Landis, who during this time was still trying to get off the event of Twilight Zone the movie, which I believe was 2 years 2 years after this, or 2 years before this. So he really wasn't directing anything. So he didn't direct this. He just co-wrote it with the director. So so he was kind of like going on the underground. And so it's like, oh, well, that's probably why it works as much as it does. So they found a way to make a movie version of this game work. And they did this in the 80s when doing game versions of stuff really wasn't a thing. So this kind of like kickstarted it. So, but this movie did it cleverly. It actually took its time. It wasn't like, something like Battleship where it's just like, hey, let's make a stupid story and just pretty much make it just a straightforward, just blockbuster, stupid action film. I can't wait until, Chutes and Ladders, where that's pretty much like Die Hard, where he's like, all right, I got to the 5th floor by using the ladder. And then he's like, I need to get to the 2nd floor. How am I going to use that? He uses a chute. So, I really, we'll eventually get a Hungry Hungry Hippos horror movie at some point, which, I kind of want to see that, but if it's clever. So Clue kind of kicked off, the game stuff. I would assume that there was game stuff or movie versions of games that came out before this. I just can't place any at the moment. But this movie just did it so cleverly and just so unique. And the fact that they gave everybody in the movie, you have the 6 guests, of course, but then you also have other characters. They gave new characters, they gave everybody enough screen time. So it's only a 90-minute film, and its pacing is very good, very on point. Everybody in the movie has enough screen time. Everybody has enough chances to, make, the character, build the character that they are. And it's just so well paced and so well done. And it's just very, very funny. And also the performances too. Like, I've always been a big fan of Tim Curry, and then I saw this movie. I'm like, this is my favorite performance from you. Like Christopher Lloyd. You have Martin Mull, rest in peace. Madeline Kahn, rest in peace. Who, I think I saw Young Frankenstein before I saw this, and I was just like, she looks so familiar. And I was like, oh, just she's funny. So, and I can't tell you how many times, my family loves to quote, something. I won't say exactly what the quote is, because if you haven't seen the movie, absolutely go watch it. But I will say it's a quote that, revolves around, flames. So, if you know what I mean, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what the quote is. So, the performances are just great. Everybody nails it. Everyone has enough screen time. The new characters are not just added for no reason, but they have a bigger motive for being there. Everybody has a reason for being there. They're not just dropped in for no reason. And it's just incredibly hilarious how this murder mystery goes. Because it feels very, like, realistic funny. It's just like, yeah, if you were in the situation, you probably would make a stupid mistake like that. And, like if you were investigating like part of the house and then you just see a little like closet door, you would be very suspicious and then just brace yourself, and then you open it and then just all of a sudden you get hit with an ironing board. It was like, yeah, that's pretty stupid. But if you were in that situation, people are getting offed, and you're trying to find the killer. You're trying to find some evidence, some clues, and you just see that your imagination just starts going, and you're like, yeah, I got it. Nope, and you get whacked in the face. So it's humor like that. It's very realistic, and just very stupid mistakes, but it's just hilarious. So to conclude, this movie, I have no flaws with it. It is a perfect film for me. I give it an amazing. It's one of my favorite films, period. This is a film where if I have friends and they said they haven't seen it, I basically sit everything down and I said, sit down on that couch. We're watching this movie because you absolutely need to see it. It is, to me, the best movie adaptation of a game, period, because of just how well it's done. I mean, I praised this movie left and right. I'm basically kissing this movie's ass for 10 and a half minutes. So, conclude. I love this film, and every time I watch it, it is always funny. And it's spot on the way they did it. So this is an absolute watch if you have not seen this movie.
Paramount Pictures invites you to an evening of mystery.
Let us in! Let us in! Let us out! Let us out!
Murder.
This is getting quite serious.
And madness. In the movie that makes a scene of the crime.
So who did it?
Clue. It's not just a game anymore.